Welcome, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. Here at the start of 2020, New Zealand sees its place in the world differently to how it did 1 year ago. Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
10 months after the Christchurch mosque's terror attack, life in New Zealand feels much the same as it did before March 15. And yet, in a fortnight, the University of Otago is hosting a conference titled National Security in the post-Christchurch era. So clearly something is different. What has changed?
Well, I think in the abstract, or in theory, a lot has changed, because it was only in March last year that we suffered the most appalling episode of terrorism on our soil. And on the 15th of March, there was an attack which killed 51 people. And I think that was a huge shock. It was sort of, in a sense, New Zealand's 9/11 moment. Have we fully adjusted to that new security environment, or changed security environment we face ourselves in? I'm not sure. I don't think so. You could argue after Christchurch we should have wasted no time, for example, bringing Mark Taylor back, a Kiwi jihadist who's languishing somewhere in the Middle East. We should have brought him straight back to face justice in this country after we had experienced terrorism in our own country. It also raises questions about, we've taken a number of initiatives, and I think the Christchurch call in particular has been prominent. It's generated some good results. Twitter, for example, have now banned political advertisements, and Jack Dorsey, the chief of Twitter, met with Jacinda Ardern, and that was a productive meeting, and I think we can be pleased by that outcome. But Facebook, which was the organisation which carried the live images of the atrocity, have refused to ban political ads, which may be based, even if they're based on false information. So they're taking money for political ads which may be completely untrue, which is generating the sort of environment in which these atrocities occur. The person who was the chief perpetrator of the Christchurch atrocity said to the police who arrested him that he was a soldier. So he was quite delusional. And those sort of delusions come from reading information which is completely inaccurate and untrue. So to answer your question, I think we've got some way to go in our efforts to bring about changes which is going to reliably prevent this sort of behaviour in the future.
What are the international currents that these changes are part of?
I think what we saw in Christchurch is an example of the Islamophobia and white nationalist extremism, which unfortunately has become part and parcel of the international landscape. This has been steadily developing since 9/11. It's been aggravated by the financial crisis of 2008-2009, and populism, white nationalist populism, has exploited some of the difficulties caused by the financial crisis to push a new agenda ahead. And I thought for a long time New Zealand was immune from this, but unfortunately we've now got evidence that we are not immune to these disquieting trends, and we need to face up to this reality.
So what does New Zealand need to do? Is it about keeping our own nose clean, or do we also have some international security responsibilities?
No, I don't think it's about keeping our nose clean. After all, we kept a relatively low profile, and yet we were still the victim of white nationalist violence. I think we need to become, if I may say so, I think we need to become less tentative and less timid about protecting our interests internationally. And we can no longer rely on old allies like the United Kingdom under the Johnson government or the Trump administration to protect New Zealand's interests in the way sometimes New Zealand governments in the past have relied on administrations in both the United Kingdom and the United States to do that job. I think we have to realise that in the world we have today, an interconnected, globalised world, New Zealand actually has much more agency as a relatively small player than it did in the past. And interestingly, the bigger players have less agency than they often assume. One of the persistent trends of the contemporary world is that unilateral action by even a superpower is rarely effective. And that gives an opportunity for smaller players like New Zealand to align with like-minded countries and to start quite robustly defending their interests and values. And one of the biggest things that we really need to protect, which is under threat, is the international rules-based system. The strong don't need rules. And it's no coincidence that the big players, China, Russia, and the United States under Mr. Trump, have been distinctly unenthusiastic about the multilateral system. But for smaller players, in fact, the great majority of countries in the international system, I would put the figure as high as 185 or slightly higher, they depend on rules because they're not in a position they're not strong enough to make their own rules. So they need those rules to create a level playing field in trade and indeed in diplomatic relations. So we've got to probably be more active. We've probably got to move to a mindset where we stop thinking ourselves as a small state and more of a minor power. Start using our soft power.
Looking ahead, during 2020, do you envisage further security initiatives beyond the Christchurch call?
Yes, I think that's the beginning. And for the reasons I've just gone through, I think New Zealand needs to start building bridges with countries like Canada, Australia, the members of the EU, which share our fundamental values. A liberal democracy, a belief in the rule of law, and also we need to, I think, align ourselves with countries which accept that many of the problems that countries face, whether they be in the environmental area or the security area, need international solutions. In short, I think New Zealand should not shy away from the fact that we are part of a majority of countries that need international cooperation. And unfortunately, there are a number of players at the moment on the international scene which don't take that view. And the UK has attacked, both the UK and the United States in recent years have attacked multilateral institutions which New Zealand holds in high regard. So that we need to be quite clear. I think to specifically answer your question, I think we need to intensify pressure on the likes of Facebook. I don't think they should be allowed to undermine democracy by very rich people, often billionaires, paying for political adverts which are completely false and which are widely disseminated. That's not in the interests of citizens and liberal democracy. You could argue that until groups like Facebook are tackled, maintaining and holding fair and free democratic elections may become increasingly problematic. So we've got some big challenges ahead. I think New Zealand can play a very constructive role in it.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.